All right, guys, welcome to our Unit 7 Quiz 1 study guide. In this video, I'll be going over some of the problems for you guys. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'll start off here with number 5. It's asking for the y-intercept. On a quadratic equation in standard form, this will be the y-intercept. You get the y-intercept by plugging 0 in for x. And whenever you plug 0 in for x, these terms just go away, and you'll just be left with 0 for x and 6 for y. To find the vertex, we use the formula negative b over 2a. This is for number 6. All right, so the b value is 4. The a value is negative 2. And we'll go ahead and simplify that. And I get 1. Okay, now that's the x part of the vertex. To find the y part of the vertex, we're just going to plug it in up here. Plug the answer that we just got into the equation. All right, and so don't forget when you're doing this to do your exponents first. So 1 to the second power is 1. And then we're going to do our multiplication next. And then we just add all those things together and we get 8. And so that's the y value. So the vertex of this quadratic would be 1, 8. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, now we'll go ahead and get the roots, number 7. To get the roots, we're going to factor. So first of all, we're going to replace the y with 0. That's how you find roots. Roots are where your quadratic touches the x-axis, and when you're on the x-axis, the y value is 0, so we plug in 0. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start factoring. When you factor, the first thing you want to do is take out a GCF, so I can take a 2 out of this whole thing. So if I divide each term by 2, I'll be left with negative 2, that is, x squared minus 2x minus 3. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor that trinomial using the box method that we've learned before. So we put the first term here in the top left, last term here in the bottom right. We find two numbers that multiply to make x squared. We find two numbers that multiply together to make negative 3. Now one of those has to be negative, but I'll get to that in a minute. Then we complete the box. And we know we've done it right if these two middle numbers here can add up to make the middle number. So 3 and 1 can make a negative 2 if the 3 is negative. So if this 3 is negative here, then that means this would have been my negative there. So it factors into x minus 3 and x plus 1. All right. From there, you're going to use the zero product property. You're going to set each one of those pieces equal to 0. And solving it gives us those two values, which are 3 and negative 1. And those are my roots. So we have 3 and negative 1. And each of those had a y value of 0. So those are my two roots. All right. Moving on to the next one. The last one's asking us to graph the function here. So we're going to use everything that we did in 5, 6, and 7 to accomplish that. Going to plot my y-intercept first. Then I'm going to do my vertex next, 1, 8. And then I'm going to do my roots last. From there, we should be able to get a pretty nice sketch of our parabola. Okay, so there it is. All right, so for number 10 here is my next one I'll go over with you guys. we want to find the equation of a quadratic function that has these roots and the given point. For that, we're going to use this little formula here. We'll call this first one here R1. We'll call this second one here R2, and these are my X's and Y's. So we're just going to plug those in. In their appropriate places. All right, so 2 minus a negative 1, that's really just 2 plus 1, which is 3. 2 minus 7 is negative 5. Multiplying all this together, we get negative 15. A equals negative 30. And then solving for A, we get 2. So it looks like the A value would be 2. That moves us on to the next phase of the process. In the next phase, we go back to this equation up here at the top. And we're going to plug in the roots again, but the A also. And we will not be plugging in the X's and Y's this time. Once again, the double negatives make a positive. We're going to do the box method for this piece here. This time we're using the box not to factor, but to multiply. So we start outside the box, and we multiply to fill in the box. So we have x squared. Combining my like terms here, we have minus 6x, and then minus 7 at the end there. Last step is to go ahead and distribute. And we have our equation in standard form. All right, let's move on to our next question. All right, so we're going to solve this with the quadratic formula, which is given by the formula negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so the a for number 12 is negative 1. It's the number that's in front of the n squared. The b is also negative 1. That's the number in front of the n. And the c is the 56, which is a number without an n. And we're just going to go ahead and plug those in first to our quadratic formula. I like to start off with blank parentheses. All right, so we're plugging in the b in the first two spots. We're plugging in the a in the next spot and also on the bottom, and the c goes last. All right, we're going to go ahead and start simplifying this. I'm going to simplify that first. That becomes 1. I'm going to simplify that next, which is 1. I'm going to simplify this group of 3 things here. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. And negative 4 times 56, I want to say, that's a big number. Let me multiply it out here a little bit. 224, but it is a negative 224 because we are multiplying by a negative 4. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify inside of here. So the double negatives become positive, and then 1 plus 224 is 225. Now sometimes you get a nice square root here. This is one of those instances, but maybe that's not obvious to you. So I'll review with you guys how to simplify square roots here. This is stuff we've done in the past, but that's what the study guide video is for, is to help you in case you have trouble with any of these old skills. So we'll go ahead and go over that real quick. So I want to figure out what is the square root of 225. Well, I noticed that it ends in a 5, and anytime something ends in a 5, it can probably be divided by 5. In fact, it can be. So 5 goes into the 225 45 times. Then you have 45, which is 5 times 9. And then you have 9, which is 3 times 3. All these numbers here got split up into other numbers, but what we're left with at the end of the branches are the prime factors, and we put those inside of the square root. And anything that has a pair, we could take out of the root. And then we cross off the pairs. Notice there's nothing else left in the root, so I can just leave the root out now. And I am left with 5 times 3, which is 15. So the square root of 225 is 15. So writing that, then I have 1 plus or minus 15 over negative 2. All right, now whenever you don't have a square root anymore, what we're going to do is we're going to split it up into two separate problems. One where you have a plus and one where you have a minus. All right, so that is 16, and divide that by negative 2, we get negative 8. So there's one of my answers. That is negative 14, divided by negative 2 is positive 7. And there you go. So my final answer there would be negative 8 and 7. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at two more. And the reason I like to include a few of these is because depending on how the square root turns out, you have to do different things along the way. All right, so this time my A is 2, my B is negative 3, and my C is negative 1. Go ahead and plug those in now. So B goes in the first two spots, A goes in the next spot and on the bottom, and C goes in the last spot. All right, we'll simplify that piece. That's 3. Simplify that piece, that's 9. Simplify that group of 3 there, that's going to be negative 8. Simplify that piece and it's 4. Double negatives make a positive, so I'm going to add those together next. Now 17 does not break down. 17 is a prime number, and so you can't take a square root of 17. When you get that, it's actually a little bit easier than the last problem. You just stop right there and you're all done. So that would be our answer. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. All right, so on number 16, the A value is 7, the B value is 6, and the C value is 4. So let's plug it in. That's negative 6. That's 36. My group of 3 there, 16 times 7, that's a pretty big number. You're welcome to use calculators on this little quiz if you want to, but I'm just going to use my own math. There we go. Next, we'll go ahead and do some subtraction. 112 is being subtracted from 36, so 112 minus 36, and it's going to end up negative because we're subtracting a bigger number from a smaller number. So I end up with negative 76 there. All right, so we have a negative underneath the square root, and that is yet another circumstance that we need to watch out for. So what do we do in that case? Well, some of you guys may remember that we take an I out. So let's begin simplifying that square root a little bit. So I'll take, oops, that was too big of a mark. Let me make that smaller. Take the negative off and put an I in the front instead. And now I need to see if I can break down my 76 at all. Now that's an even number, so I know that 2 goes in there. And that's also an even number, so I know that 2 goes into there. And 19 is prime, so we'll leave that alone. Those numbers were broken up, and my prime numbers that I'm left with are 2, 2, and 19. And for every group of 2, you could take that number out of the root, and so there is the simplified form of that root. So I'm going to replace this whole thing here with 2 radical 19, but I'm going to leave the I in there, so it's going to look like this. All right, and then one other thing is notice that these 3 numbers they all have a common factor. I can divide all 3 of these by a number that they have in common, and that's 2. 6 can be divided by 2, 2 can be divided by 2, and 14 can be divided by 2. So basically what we're doing is we're reducing the fraction here when we do that. So that if I divide those 3 numbers by 2, here's what I would end up with. And that would be my final answer there. Okay? And that'll do it for our study guide. And as you guys can see here on the last page, I've got the answer key provided for other problems here in case you guys are interested in getting some help with that. So we'll see you guys in class, and good luck on your quiz.